Welcome to End Time Talk Radio, where the truth is usually stranger than fiction. The purpose of these shows are not to scare you, but to prepare you, because what you don't know could hurt you. The word says in Hosea 4:6, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge." Thank you for joining us. My name is Julie, and here is the host of the show, Barry Meyer.
Welcome to End Time Talk Radio. Today is January 21st of 2015. We're coming out of the chutes with a bang. A lot of things happening with our economy now. Our last show we had with my pastor, Stephen Grant. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go back and listen to that. Now, also, we have a gentleman, and this is actually an in-studio interview. We have Michael McCune. Now, he also does the rant. Michael, how do people get the rant?
They can just write me on my email address at mccrant@gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll put that in the bottom of YouTube video so people can listen. Okay. Now, Michael also does a show with Stephen and Stan Grant called In Defense of a Nation. Michael, how long have you been with that show now?
3 years.
3 years?
3 years.
It's always really good because I love the part that you bring.
Well, it's a different... They base theirs on the Bible, and so I'm learning about the Bible from them, but mine is based on the economics.
Well, I really enjoy the show.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, and you bring it's like a piece of a pie. Each person brings a different part to it. Until I really was on the show, I didn't realize how you guys made everything work together. It's really neat how with the iPads and everything. That's really amazing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's fun. It really is fun.
Well, I guess, Michael, let's start maybe a little bit of your background so people, because it's been at least 6 months since I've had you on.
Oh, yeah. I was a tax auditor for the government for 16 years, and when I left, I was really upset because the government wanted things done, wanted audits done, so they came out with the answers that they wanted, rather than having it done according to the law that was established. And in the 23 years since I've left, it's basically they've continued to go downhill because they follow that path.
And it's really sad because you've mentioned a lot of things when you were an auditor. My favorite one is when you went to that school, and I don't remember where, but they said it was your fault. Can you maybe explain on that?
Yeah, it was a small school. That was when I was doing public funds. And it was a very small school, a rural school. And I walked in and sat down. They assigned me an area, and I was sitting at it. And there was this lady sitting in the next cubicle, and she just sat there all day. At noon, she got up and she left. Came back the next morning. There she was again. She was reading a book. Got up at noon, left. Well, at the end of the week, I caught the superintendent of the school district, and I said, "Okay, you got to explain to me what she does. What is her job? Because is it to edit books or whatever?" Yeah. He looked at me and he says, "It's your fault." And I'm going, "What?" Well, come to find out, since I was doing the public funds part of it, the money that they got, they had to put on a speech therapist. Well, it was such a small school, such a small school district that they really didn't need. They didn't have anybody at that time that needed it.
Sure.
But to get their school lunch money, to get their library funding, to get different things that were federally funded projects, they had to have this individual. Well, what they did is they got together with another school district that was also very rural, and they split the cost of it. So it was costing them to keep their school lunch money and stuff. It cost them $19,000 from each one of those school districts to pay her salary for the year.
$19,000.
Yeah, she was getting $38,000.
My God, and that's out of our pocket.
That was out of our pocket, and that was, now you're going to love this one, that was 39 years ago.
39 years ago. So double that, maybe 10 times now higher, maybe.
Well, it depends because, again, they write regulations. But the problem is, it's just like with your tax laws, with everything else. They write it for a large economy like New York City or Baltimore. It doesn't work in flyover America, as they dub us.
Sure.
Because we are a different breed of cat. We're smaller. We don't have the congestion that they have there. We don't have the mass of people. So in Baltimore, maybe they would have 1,000 students that might need speech therapy.
Yeah.
But in a school district where their total population was under 800, kindergarten through 12th grade, they didn't need anybody.
Yeah.
And yet every school had to have their own speech therapist. It just doesn't make any sense. But this is where the waste of money comes in. And this is where I have a real problem with an economist that used to work for Bill Clinton. He wrote a very interesting article called The Politics of Economic Stupidity. And he blames it on politics. But the politics that he wants is an increase in the shovel-ready jobs, for instance, that Barack Obama was talking about. He wants to build bridges. Well, you got to build them to somewhere. There got to be a demand to build those bridges. There's got to be a demand for the infrastructure type jobs that he's asking for. That's the only way that he can see to rebuild the economy that we're facing right now. And that is where the problem comes in. Washington always thinks it's right. As a person that's lived on Main Street and not on Wall Street all its life, I know that they're wrong.
Yeah.
And I can prove it. And I just gave a talk earlier this month, 2 weeks ago, on how the economy for 2015 was going to look. Well, we came out of 2014 in very poor shape. What I did is I used a mayonnaise, a Miracle Whip jar.
I remember we talking about that.
Yeah, and I have one on my desk that is the glass jar from 2009. 32 ounces, but that 32-ounce bottle in 2009 cost $1.49. At the time, our government had printed money available, according to the Federal Reserve balance sheet. They had $1.5 trillion in circulation. So if I'd have had 1 trillion jars of Miracle Whip, I would have had the same amount of money, or jars of Miracle Whip, as they had money.
Okay.
Today, just this last month, my wife went and bought some more. It's in a plastic bottle, not a glass bottle now, but it's $4.49. Our government has $4.5 trillion in circulation. So if 1 trillion jars then and 1 trillion jars now, but it costing me 3 times as much for the same item. And it's because of the government's printing press program. They are thinking that they can manipulate it. They're doing the same thing with the central bank in Europe. They're doing the same thing with the central bank in Japan, the same thing with the central bank in China. And now the IMF wants to turn everything over to the United Nations. Christine Lagarde wants to turn everything over and let them do the fiat printing.
And we're gonna keep going, but I wanted you to just touch real fast. United Nations now is more controlled by Muslims than by
sure, because each country has its own representative, one representative elected, and those people now control 114 countries. Well, the United Nations only recognizes 228.
Yeah.
Or 209. I think it's it's in that range, but just over 200. So they have more than 50% of the vote. And again, Russia we're basically at war with. China we're basically in an economic war with. Those two countries both sit on the Security Council. We lose votes there.
And it's crazy, Michael. And I wanted to touch that because we are going to talk about the Muslims. I think it's going to be an interesting shift of what's going on because most Americans don't see what's going on.
Well, you bring up a sore subject for me, but as you know, in the past, Barry, I projected what our true national debt really was. I think that was the first time I met you, in fact.
Oh, that's right.
And this was back in, again, 2001 that I had actually done this. And it was, at the time, we had a national debt that was hovering around, officially, we were below the $10 trillion mark. We were just at $8 trillion. $242 trillion. If we'd have gone into a bankruptcy court, the United States would have had to show debt of $242 trillion, not the 10 trillion that they were showing at the time.
Sure.
Since Barack Obama did his amnesty program and announced it, I sat down and recomputed the effect this is going to have. We're over $380 $4 trillion in debt if we went into bankruptcy court, just because of what they've done. We're going to take care of these people. Our government is on the hook for retirement. Our government will be on the hook for Social Security.
Healthcare.
Yeah. All that stuff, our government is on the hook for it. And the changes in Obamacare, or the Affordable Health Care Act, have really put us behind the 8 ball. And so not all of that is directly attributable to his amnesty program, but that is another factor that has to be taken into account. Everything that's paid for is coming out of the taxpayer pocket.
And over $300 trillion, that's for only one country.
That's just for one country. That's for America. And that is just the government portion of the debt.
That's not the people portion. The people in the states
and the corporations. That's right.
Oh, so that we can get crazy, ridiculous on that.
The Bank of International Settlements recently did a report that showed the total debt of the G20 countries for that's government debt and corporate debt. They didn't get into people debt. They just went corporation and country. $2.4 quadrillion. Quadrillion. The entire global economy is adjusted for inflation, of course. You got to throw that in there. Adjusted for inflation is right at $57 trillion a year.
That's for the whole world.
That's for the whole world. Wow. And yet our governments and our corporations have run up debt in excess of $2.4 quadrillion. That's, you sit there and you look at it, and it's unfathomable that the kid that is being born today is going to die still owing money that we have on the books right now. This is today's Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
The debt sale machine is cranking out big deals. That's the headline.
Wow.
And the problem that we have is, again, private corporations are not able to recycle or restock their shelves or their product based upon our common sales market. Because things are changing so fast, a lot of the stuff that is sitting on their shelves is now obsolete. Nobody wants it.
Sure.
They want the newer technology stuff. Since they can't sell it, since they've already paid for it, what they do is they're going to recycle it. Here's where the fraud comes in. Our Federal Reserve, our national government, counts that as profit because they're restocking their shelf.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not the guy has sold it or not, the fact that they're restocking a shelf adds to the economy, the economic outlook. And I'm saying that's baloney. I could use better words, but baloney is the best one.
Well, yeah.
But you know, Barry, this is one of those problems where they lie to us often enough. They're believing their own lies now, and that is proof further that we're in real trouble.
Well, you know, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and that's what we're looking at, something that's going to be a major crash here in our country. We've often talked about off-air amongst you and pastor and church and that about Amos 8. And, you know, when you talk about that and you see that as headlines now.
Every day. And I wish I could say it was an occasional headline or like one other dissenting voice, but you see it every single day now. It used to be to get a background for the rant.
Yeah.
I would take 3 to 4 days of research to find enough material to put together a rant.
Yeah.
Now I'm being inundated with those kind of stories 3 to 4 times an hour. It's just phenomenal how fast this thing is taken off.
One thing I wanted to mention before I forget, Governor Matt Mead sent a personal letter to all the pastors up here in Cheyenne, and you might have seen that too, I don't know. But basically, on January 28th of 2015, or 29th, all the pastors that wanted to join this movement, this, I can't, and now it kind of escapes me, you'll be able to probably put me in, but trying to get unity of all the pastors together.
Diversity.
That's right, in the whole state.
Right.
And wants to have a big old, let's say, powwow. Now, the friend I know that's as a pastorate, as a pastor like here in town, said, no way, I'm not doing that at all. I'm not going to join with this, I want to call it ecumenical movement, but that's more Catholic, but it's, you know what I'm trying to say.
Right. The problem that you have with this, Barry, is, again, this is just a reflection of what's wanted at the national level. Mm-hmm. They want a diversity movement. Yeah. They've been pushing a diversity movement for 50 some odd years. The problem that you have is the original immigrants that came to this country, and my forefathers were one of them. They were Irish. They came here, and all of a sudden, they had to adapt to American way of life. They couldn't bring their old style stuff. They were expected to speak English. Mm-hmm. American English, not British English.
Sure.
They were expected to act like an American. And if they didn't, they were made fun of. They were ostracized in public because they didn't have the skills to negotiate public life. Now, with this diversity junk that they're throwing at us, we have to accept everything. Well, the people that are coming are no longer getting acclimatized to American way of life. They are keeping their old traditions. So instead of having 50 United States, we now have entire counties in some states that are totally different. They're total outcasts because they have embraced or kept their old way of life. Well, if their old way of life was so doggone good, why didn't they stay there? Yeah. Why did they have to bring it up here?
True. I wanted to, as I'm talking, I'm trying to bring back what I wanted to say. But the reason I brought this up is that we're becoming so unitized, in everything. No longer are we, like our own country anymore. We're becoming more worldly, right. I guess you could say.
Yes, and we used to be the melting pot where those things were. Now, they don't want any part of the melting pot. They want to cling to their Ghana tradition, or they want to spring to their Somalian dish, or Honduras, or wherever it happens to be from. But like I say, if things were so great there, folks, then why didn't they stay there? That's the question you have to ask. This is why change is imperative. They have to change, not us.
Well, and that's one thing that's what I was alluding to, is that there's a news story, and I believe it was Fox News was talking about it. I think it was last week. Now, they were ostracized by it, that, talking about how France has these no-go limits. You can't go.
No-go zones.
Yeah. Now that we're seeing them here now in America, there's no-go zones.
Dearborn, Michigan is a prime example.
Yeah. And we're seeing even in Texas, and there's like 13 states now, they have certain pockets now. You really don't want to go there because you'll have to. They had a Fox News reporter going, I don't remember where it was now, but he was on trying to go and see, and I'll try to find it.
That was Waters.
That's right.
On the O'Reilly report. And he was trying to get into the Islamic Conclave Convention. In Houston, Texas.
That's right.
And he wasn't allowed in. Even though he had been given credentials, when they found out that he wasn't Muslim, they wouldn't let him in.
I'm going to slip that video in here.
Conference edition. Over the weekend in Garland, Texas, outside of Dallas, hundreds of folks attended an event called Stand with the Prophet, a conference and fundraiser. One of those people was Jesse Waters. Kind of.
What's the point of the Defend the Prophet rally?
This is the month of the Prophet's birth, and it's just a month to celebrate him.
Did you fill out the media form? Yeah, I filled out the media form, and I bought tickets too, personally, and now they're saying I can't go in.
There's a certain time when media are allowed?
Because I thought this was supposed to be open press, and I came all the way down here from New York.
All the media is right up front.
But they can't ban us from being at a conference center. They don't own the conference center.
They rented it out.
Now, why can't the press come in? What's going on in there? We're not hiding anything in there, are we? Can we come in?
Well, if you didn't fill out a press pass, I did.
Jesse Waters with 2 T's. Do you think that the convention might be better served if it was protesting Islamic Jihad?
We have a wide variety of conferences, including but not limited to anti-jihad conferences.
That's great. We want to hear more of that. The keynote speaker in there is an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing.
Can you define what that means? I'm not going to accept that propaganda.
It's not propaganda, it's legal fact. President Obama doesn't like to say Islamic extremism. Does that make you feel better?
I think it gives rise to Islamophobia when we associate extremism with a religion.
Islamophobia didn't take down the Trade Center. Islamic fascists did. Let's just love. Let's love. Come here, bring it in. One of the keynote speakers in there says he wants to replace the Constitution with Sharia law.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Huh.
Do you think Islamophobia is a bigger threat to Muslims than jihadists?
I think the biggest threat to the United States are the United States Americans themselves.
With all due respect, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Don't you want to fight the jihadists?
I want to fight anybody that's trying to take the lives of innocent people. That includes the United States government as well. Dude, I was in the military.
Did the U.S. military train you to kill civilians?
Yes.
No.
Oh,
and that's what Al-Qaeda does. There seems to be a lot of turmoil in that part of the world.
Exactly.
A lot of beheadings,
right.
Stonings of women. Why is that tolerated in the Muslim world?
Because that's what we believe. It says in the Quran that women shouldn't be able to, go out in public just, wearing regular clothes.
When women aren't allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia, do you think that's right?
I just believe what the Quran says because I'm a Muslim.
So you believe in subjugating women?
I don't believe...
Because that's what the Quran says?
No.
Would you like Sharia law in America?
Yes. That'd be nice.
Am I going to hell? Because I'm not Muslim.
Yes, you are going to hell, sir.
Oh, man!
You should come to the mosque.
I should.
Yes.
Well, they won't even let me in the convention. I don't think I'm getting in a mosque.
Okay.
All right, so what are you here protesting today?
Sharia law. They think they're going to try to impose it here, and it's not going to happen.
Now, they've been saying that there's a lot of Islamophobia out here.
No. If you were to ask the people, the survivors, and the family of those people in France, if it was Islamophobia, do you think they would say that they have Islamophobia? We love Muslims. We love them, but we just don't agree with what they do.
We've been out here for 6 hours, still not allowed in. I just spoke to someone who said the organizers specifically barred the O'Reilly factor from coming inside.
The conversation today was people denouncing terrorism in the name of Islam.
I would not know that because I wasn't allowed in. Did you ever watch Waters World?
No, I haven't.
I'm Waters, and this is my world right here.
Okay.
All right? All right.
All right, here's Waters. So outside they were friendly to you, it seemed. Nobody was mean, were they?
The police and all the organizers were nice to me. I bought tickets to go there. I was credentialed, and they wouldn't let me in.
Who's they? Who wouldn't let you in?
Well, CARE was running the press shop for this conference.
Okay.
Police wouldn't let me in. Anybody having anything to do with the conference would not let me in.
The police, was that the Garland, Texas police?
They had
local
a
town
lot
police?
of police there because there's this gigantic Tea Party protest, and they had a SWAT team there as well.
But who was the police agency? Was it Garland,
Yes,
Texas? It was
local Garland.
So they said you couldn't go in even though you had a ticket and you were credentialed.
Right, and they revoked my ticket as I landed in Dallas and refunded me.
No, they refunded your money.
And then they wouldn't let me in, but they let other local media in to shoot the first 20 minutes and then booted them out.
Did you hear from the folks outside? Was there any radical stuff going on in there?
It's hard to say because it invites suspicion because they won't let you in.
Well, they just don't like us. They just don't like us. I mean, I understand they don't
Right,
like
but
us.
they wouldn't let anybody in past 20 minutes, so who knows what was said in there. I know that some of the people I talked to, as you can see, wanted Sharia law in the United States.
But that kid, let's give the kid a break. He's 12 years old. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
He sounded a little brainwashed.
Yeah,
but the other guy, he was pretty radical.
All right, Jesse Waters, everybody, there he is.
With that being said, Michael, we're going to see more of that happen because now even the American thinker, I told you about it, now we're being warp speed of bringing all this Islam, now Muslims into our country.
Sure. And it's going to be much worse. And it's happened with everything that gets a toehold here. One of the reasons the Muslims have such a easy access into America is all they have to do is claim refugee status.
Yep.
Now, wait a minute. The war on terror is over. The war on Al-Qaeda, blah, the Taliban's dead, Al-Qaeda's dead. We've heard our president say this.
Yeah.
The problem is these people are still fleeing it. Well, you can't have it both ways. It's got to be dead or it's still a problem. If it's a problem, you can't let this disaffected religion into our country. And again, I hate to use this, but I'll go back. You've heard me talk about this too. Islam is not a religion. We still have religious freedom in this country. But each and every Muslim should be required to register as a foreign agent because Islam is also a form of government. And those people that come here should be forced to register and register every year as a foreign representative, a foreign government representative.
And the reason why that doesn't happen because our highest elected official...
Because he refuses to acknowledge that there's a problem. The war is over. Well, if it is, then why do you still have refugee status for these people? Oh, because they're still getting pushed out of where they're at by war.
Well, and the reason why I wanted to bring all the Muslims in is because we're the ones that are going to have to support it with our tax dollars.
Well, again, this is why when I went back and refigured it, it jumped so fast, so very, very fast. The basis I used was everyone that was alive in America at the start of the year, 2015.
Okay.
Everybody that was alive in 2015. And then he said that he was, Barack Obama said he was adding 5 million.
Yeah.
That was it. Then they came out and they said, no, it's 11 million.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi let the cookie drop. 44 million illegals are in this country. 44 million. Well, when you put that on, that they're going to have benefits and stuff that they haven't paid for. When I started working at the age of 15, I paid Social Security, I paid Medicare. Not much, but I paid it.
Sure.
As I developed and grew up, I paid it and paid it and paid it. I still haven't started collecting it. But the thing is, these people are coming in the middle of the ship. They're coming here when they're 55. They're coming here when they're 45. They're coming here when they're 35. They don't have the legacy of paying into it. And in many cases, they don't have jobs, so they're on public record anyway. And they say, well, look at what it's costing us. I'll go to Cheyenne, Wyoming, go to the schools. The school my grandson attends, about a third of the kids in that school don't speak English. How can they have a public education and they can't speak English? The teachers they hire have to be bilingual. They have to have special classes. Well, this is an additional cost that our taxes are supporting, our tax base. It shouldn't be there. I'm sorry. It should not be there. Until they are proficient in English, they shouldn't go to school.
Well, what's sad is that where I work at, I have a gentleman, a black gentleman that used to work at, and I'm just going to say it, the Walmart distribution center out here west of Cheyenne. He was actually threatened and was actually going to be beat up if he didn't leave, because there's so many illegals now working there that if you don't fit in, you're out.
Yeah, and well, we got the same thing. I'll just go down to Greeley with the processing meat processing plant down there. Almost 100% Somalians working there now. They if you're not, and the thing is, you are flat told. You either convert or you're going to wind up on a meat hook.
True. Yeah.
So, again, they don't see equality like we see equality. We're giving it to them for nothing, and it's costing us.
Yeah.
We're paying for it, and yet in the long run, everybody that is hearing me today is going to lose some financial wealth because the government's redistribution.
There was a news article, it was an opinion out of the Wyoming Tribune-Eagle, and I think it was like December 19th, and I got on my website. I need to post it on my news site so people can actually see it, and I'll have to send it to you, Michael. Basically, she was standing up for all these refugees that are coming in, and one of the things I had done on my blog here, my news blog, and if people want to go there, they can go to barry-julie.blogspot.com, and I'll put it in the bottom of this video here too, because I think people find it well worth looking at. There was I think there was 5 things I came up with that, to me, it seemed like Cheyenne was becoming kind of like a global prison for us. And a couple of them that I was just stating off was that Section 8 housing here. Because it's becoming so easy now for Muslims to get onto it. They're going in the front of the line. They don't have 18-month waiting period. Even like in Greeley, they have a waiting period. They're coming up from Greeley, Colorado to Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Because there's no waiting period. And I know this for a fact because my daughter works there.
There you go.
At the Housing Authority. So, yeah, she complains about this all the time. And it makes things weird. The fun part was, just last year, my daughter's car, as she was parked at work, got hit by a refugee.
Okay.
No insurance.
Yep.
No driver's license.
Yeah.
Why was she even allowed to have a car? Oh, she's refugee status. You can't ask about those things. Yeah. The U.S. Marshal showed up to make sure that the local police and sheriff's office handled it properly because she had refugee status.
Man, why are they getting the rights? I mean, well, I know
same
why.
Thing, yes.
But we know why. But it's like you want to grab people by the shirt and say, "Guys, you got to wake up."
I turn off the TV more often than not anymore because when they start in on some of this baloney, I don't care what news channel you're on, you got it. You wind up slapping them silly. This is the day after the president gave his State of the Union.
Yep.
The economy is doing fantastic.
Yeah.
It's doing very well. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, I don't know how many times I heard him use that as a basis for imposing new taxes on us. The problem that you have is our economy is not doing well. The average person understands this. But you're holding on your lap a copy of the rant.
Yeah, I want to get to that.
And in 2012, and it's funny, 2012 was a national election year. We voted on president.
Yeah.
And yet for 2012, the Census Bureau of all places has finally come out with a report that says the United States lost 70,000 businesses. Now, this is small companies that could no longer make it. 470,000 of them went out of business. Those were replaced by 400,000. That means we have a net of a negative loss of 70,000 jobs, 17.5%.
Yeah.
And yet the economy's doing well.
Yeah.
Now, we've all heard about the big boys that have moved overseas or moved to another country because to avoid taxes. They don't want to get taxed on stuff that's no longer in America. But this is a real problem. I just don't understand. I mean, and we're behind now standing-wise. We lost more jobs. We had fewer business creation than places like Hungary and Italy. Italy's one of the pigs of the Eurozone.
And we're number 12, and we're behind them.
Yeah. China, as bad as much as China is behind us, and yet they're the world's quote-unquote leading economy. We're number 2. Japan is falling apart. Yeah. They're number 3. Part of the problem is politics have gotten involved in our economy.
True.
And if you're running a business, your cost of compliance with all these government regulations from the EPA right on down, you can't compete in the marketplace with somebody from Indonesia that isn't subjected to those things, somebody from Nigeria that isn't subjected to those things, somebody from Mexico or Ghana or Brazil that isn't subjected to those same regulations. This is why China has dirty air right now and Pittsburgh is clean. Is because we had to ship everything. 1928, I went back into the archives to look because I thought I remembered it. There was a Ford ad for new vehicles in 1928, the year before the Depression hit. Less than 1% non-American on the car that rolled off, any car that rolled off of the assembly line. What was that 1% comprised of?
Well, it'd have to be what we're making.
No, it would be the rubber.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't have rubber. At that point, they didn't have artificial rubber. They had to use the rubber tree.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And so the windshield wipers, the seals around the doors, the tires that were on it had to be made out of rubber. They had to be imported.
Okay, I understand.
The raw material had to be imported. The product was transformed from the rubber latex into rubber in America, but it still was imported. Therefore, they didn't count it as American. Today, our gross domestic product, we couldn't count a car. We couldn't count anything that comes out of Boeing. There is so little, outside of the pharmaceutical area, there is so little that we can actually count as American.
Sure.
That it's hard to believe. Our GDP has dropped to nothing. Gross domestic product, though, has become interchangeable with the word economy. Economy is the bank teller. They don't make anything. They just provide a service. A CPA. For all their highfalutin ways, an attorney. They provide a service.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make anything. They don't add anything to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't they don't add to the GDP. They do add to the economy because they have a wage, but they don't add to the GDP. I had a formula that I made when I was in school, and this was over 40 years ago. And I took for my econ class to determine if something was good or not good,
Mm-hmm.
or a country was solid or not solid. I took the gross domestic product, divided that by what I got when I took the total debt.
Okay.
At that time, it was national and corporate, state, city debt. I didn't use personal debt because Americans hadn't gotten used to running personal debt. They avoided it.
Mm-hmm.
Took all that and divided it by the number of dollars in circulation. At that time, and this was 1970, we had only $450,000 in circulation.
Really?
Less than 1/10 of what we have today.
Really?
Think of that. So every dollar in your pocket has declined to a dime, even by 1970 standards,
Mm-hmm.
because of the printed money.
Yeah.
And then there's no additional. In fact, we've lost GDP. When I ran the recent lunch or equation, I thought I was going to come out 1 to 5, 1 to 6 on my ratio, which was still a good job, a good deal for a country. I came out 1 to 127. If you had a horse running, they wouldn't let him on the track at 1 to 127 odds.
Yeah.
There's no way they'd let him on the track. Why are we saying that we have a good economy when this is the basis that we have? It makes no sense.
Michael, it's crazy because, with you bringing the brand out, and of course, when I talk to you, you're so engrossed into all this financial stuff that sometimes a person like me, call me like a layman compared to what you're doing. It's so hard to grasp. I mean, it's easier for you because you understand what's
I live there, yes.
Yeah. And when we hear all this, it feels like the dam's breaking because we're like, oh, wait a second here. We never heard all this stuff. And you bring it out.
Well, I'm fortunate. That's been because I work with numbers really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's all economics is. And the problem that we have is they said to actually run a true picture, get a true picture of the economy, you would need to put in 2 trillion pieces of information.
Uh-huh.
Nobody's got the time to do that.
Yeah.
You would start the equation when you're born. You just wouldn't be done with it when you die.
Yeah.
So that's impractical.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I just try to look at how on your gross domestic product, because then everything else in the economy becomes service.
Mm-hmm.
Take the gross domestic product and use that as a base against the printed dollar, the printed fiat in circulation for any country. And as bad as we are at 1 to 127, there are places like England,
mm-hmm.
France, Germany, most of the European Union countries outside of the Scandinavian ones. Denmark falls into the category of being a bad one. But we are better off than many, many countries of the world.
And it's crazy.
And we're at 1 to 127 that we're going to make it.
Yeah.
I have an article. Most American kids in college today think that they are never going to get out of debt.
Mm-hmm.
They have become inured to it.
Mm-hmm.
My parents grew up in the Depression. They knew what it was like. They fought World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I look at myself, and I have probably less debt than anybody that I'm talking to right now.
Yeah.
On paper, I think I have $84,000 in debt.
And
that includes cars, house, all that.
We're pretty close to where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, when you look at it on the other side, some of these kids have higher college tuition bills to pay than I have accumulated debt.
That's crazy. I mean, a doctor. What does a doctor now pay? A couple $100,000 or something like that? Or I don't know. I've never gone to college.
I say some of them. It depends on what school they go to.
Yeah,
again,
well, yeah.
But on average, the going to medical school is about a $60,000 a year proposition.
Quite a bit, yeah.
This is why part of the reason they have to charge so much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all part and parcel of the same thing. The economy's broke, and you ain't going to fix it by politics. The way to fix it politically is to have politics out of the equation completely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. So,
Michael, with all this stuff happening, it makes a person kind of a little uneasy because you're not exactly sure what's going to happen. Like, Jim Rickards is now saying that what 2008 was, what's going to happen will be 6 times even worse.
Yeah, and part of it, again, is because debt has gone up so much in relationship to what we had then. There is a massive, massive bubble in Wall Street, and it's caused by corporations. In 2008, we wanted to get back at the CEOs, the people that got the big bonuses and stuff.
Yeah.
They said, you can't make this kind of salary. You spent, we paid you $6 million for this job, and oops, we went belly up. You had to be bailed out by the American taxpayer. We're not going to allow that to happen anymore. Many of these guys took a minimum pay, $1 token pay, or $1,000 for the year. That's their entire salary. They are compensated with stock options.
Okay.
Well, on the market, when they found out, when we hit the big swoon and everything was down, the reason it's come back so fast is they could take printed, borrowed money from the Fed at no interest, turn around, put it into the market. Their company has borrowed it. They buy stock options to boost the price up. This guy's got his money back.
Yeah.
It hasn't affected. In fact, he's got a nice, healthy gain, even more so than before the rules were written. And the company is in debt. Their stock price is fantastic, but there's nothing to back it up. Again, when I went to school, invested money in the stock market had to cover capital assets alone. They're using it for payroll today.
Well, what's the Wyoming government now want to do? They want to put all the extra money we have now into the stock market.
Yeah, again, and it's an easy way out. And again, Cynthia Loomis was the one that first did that when she was Secretary of State with the retirement funds and stuff. She wanted to invest them because there wasn't enough interest. They had promised the employees of the state that they were going to get an 8% return or a 7% return. Whoops. By the middle of the 1980s, they couldn't keep that up because the price of oil busted right there. And that's what's causing us today. I mean, if you look at what's going on, it's great for the consumer. I am one.
Yeah.
I just went down and with my discount, I was able to buy fuel for $1.53 a gallon.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah,
Real nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing the little dance out there by the pump. The problem is, we projected, and when I say we, I'm talking about government, state government in our case, project everything that we have done, building roads, is contingent upon the value, the relative value of the raw minerals coming out of the ground. Oil, natural gas, coal. When this price has dropped, our government has programs that they're obligated to pay for that they can no longer pay for. Our schools, we open talking about schools. Most of our school funding comes from those mineral royalty taxes in the state or the severance taxes in the state. The price is down there where they were getting $4 a gallon, or excuse me, $4 a barrel for severance taxes, they're getting less than $2.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have a budget projected, and even now they admitted just last week, well, we were still counting on $85 average
for backup derivatives.
In this area for this state. Well, all of a sudden it's down to our locals is $39 a barrel. How many gallons are in a barrel?
It's 60, right?
Nope. You're high.
Am I high? Okay.
42.
42, okay.
42 gallons in a crude barrel.
Okay.
They are paying, the guy that's pumping it is getting less than $1 a gallon.
Wow.
This is why, if you take off the federal tax, you take off the state taxes, I almost got my fuel for the same price that it is coming out of the ground without transportation or refining.
How can they do that?
They can't, not for long.
Yeah.
But the price is continuing to go down because places like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Iran, their only source of revenue for their government is what they pull out of the ground. When the price is going down, they didn't cut back. They pumped even more out. They broke their agreements with OPEC to pump even more because their governments would fail without it.
And that's why the oil price is going to keep going down.
And the oil price is going to keep going down. Plus, we have fracking. We have new techniques for getting it out. This is why the pipeline, Keystone, is really important because, again, that's going to create American jobs, number one. Number two, there's going to be more jobs added at the refinery, the terminal down in Houston, because that's where it's refined. Oh, geez, it's a win-win situation for America, and we got a president that says, stick it in your eye, I ain't going to sign it even if you pass it.
You know, my wife's, one of her people that she works with at work has a mother up in Gillette, and now because of the oil prices have gone down so low now, the houses are losing their value. I mean, people are losing their jobs now. I mean, it hasn't hit Cheyenne yet. When do we start seeing it here? Do you think?
But again, I don't know. Wyoming has always been in a boom and bust cycle because we rely so heavily on those natural resources. But here is the crux of the matter: is it going to, $39? It's down to, and they're looking at it staying there for the year. Is it going to be when it gets to 35? Is it going to be? Because again, our politicians, the legislature, is not set up to make an adjustment. And no state legislature is set up to make that kind of an adjustment, where as much as 50% of their anticipated revenue is gone.
A lot of people are going to lose their jobs in the government, too.
Well, again, and it's this, but over the last, by comparison, over the last 5 years, people that work for government have seen their pay go up by and pay benefit package go up by about 10%.
Yeah.
Nobody in private industry can say the same thing unless they're sitting on the board of directors.
True. Yeah.
The average person in private can't do it. I know people in private business right now that are going, hey, I don't know how I'm going to make my next bill. I don't know how I'm going to pay for the next, because sure, I got extra money right now because my energy price is down. I got another question, though. We talked about energy prices being down.
Yeah.
How was your heating bill this month?
Well, my wife usually pays for it, so I don't get to see it, but I think it was a little higher than normal.
Yes, it was. And why is that?
Well, I don't know. It should be high. It should be lower.
Oh, government regulation.
That's right. Okay.
Okay, and I'll tell you how this works. We just put in a new power plant.
Okay.
Was for 5.1
million? Was it
million that they put into that plant?
And that's natural gas too, isn't it?
But it's natural gas. But here's the thing: for every dollar they put in, the government, by an act in 1937, when they were trying to get the utilities spread out, guaranteed them an 11% rate of return. So for every dollar they spend, they get this much back, guaranteed. Well, I'm sorry, that's why our rates went up. And you cannot do that. Well, at this point in time, when the cost, and this again was a capital expense, I understand that, but we only have 75,000 people that's going to benefit directly.
Well, and a lot of it's going to be business.
Well, but again, I don't care.
Yeah.
We're back at the same thing. We've got to pay for it. And what I'm saying is our base, I don't care if it's business or not, our base, total population, kids, women, children, and the elderly, 78,000 people.
Yeah.
Oops. And we're supposed to not only pay for a $5.1 million investment, but also turn around and pay an 11% rate of return annually on that.
Man. Yeah.
There you go. And I knew it had to go up. And I sit here and this is why I'm saying it's stupid politics.
Yeah.
Stupid politics and dumb political decisions in the past should have kept their damn noses out of it completely. Same thing. I want to do this for people. I want to give them free education. I want to give them 2 years of college. Right now, 9 out of 10 kids, and this was on Fox News last night, 9 out of 10 kids that graduate from high school in this country aren't prepared to do college-level work. And yet they got a high school degree. How is that? Go out here to our local community college. They have a massive relearning rate because these kids want to take college classes and they can't do it. Math, English, writing skills. It doesn't matter. They can't handle the workload. They got a degree from a local high school and they can't.
Well, and just in case in point, my grandfather, he got out of school in 6th grade. He was able to spell better than me or my dad. And that was in 6th grade. He just didn't go any further for whatever reason, work, whatever.
Well, okay, you're about in the same spot. My grandfather was the best engineer that I'd ever met. He could make a tractor run with a spark plug and a wire.
Yeah.
And yet, he never finished the 3rd grade. My grandmother, his wife, finished the 8th grade. She went to work when she was 15 as a cook in the lumber camp she lived in.
Yeah.
So it was just the way things were back then. There's no excuse today, except the kid is going, oh, well, I'm playing my Xbox, or I'm playing, I'm listening to the tunes, or I've got a gang meeting I'm going to go to. I'm more interested in the gal down the street than I am doing my homework. They can't give them homework because it's discriminatory against those kids that don't have parents to watch them.
And I think also is that, as kids, we're even back when I was in school, we're taught not to think for ourselves.
Yeah, you had to do what the teacher said.
Yeah.
I got penalized a lot for that in school because I was on the other side. Biggest mistake I had a professor make was he asked me, in your opinion, on the Blue Book test, and I wrote an essay.
Yeah.
And it was totally opposed to what he saw the social structure of America. And anyway, he failed me. I just took it to the dean, and I said, look at this. Did I or did I not answer the question? Because he asked for my opinion. Number 2 is, did I or did I not justify my opening statement of what side of the thing I came down to with facts? If I didn't do that, then that's on me.
Yeah.
But if I did do it, even if he disagrees with it, he's got to pass me because I justified my position. He may argue with me, but he can't do this. The dean called the professor in. Says, what is this? He said, well, he didn't answer the question right. He answered the question right. You asked for his opinion. He gave it to you. The second thing was, and he said, well, he can retake the test. I said, oh, no, I've already sat down and did the test.
Yeah.
He's got to judge me on that. He gave me a B+.
A B+.
Couldn't give me an A, but he gave me a B+. And recently, when I've been in my rant, I had a guy write me and says, you're wrong. You've got the facts. You can organize your thoughts better, and you can present them better than I can, but you're wrong. Wait a minute. If I got the facts right, then where did I make a mistake?
And he admitted to it.
He admitted to it.
Yeah.
Again, they don't want to hear people that are on the opposite side. And again, you can argue. I love the great arguments. But you have to come armed with some facts. And I told this in a debate class to a person that I was with. I said, you lost because you came to the debate unarmed. A debate is a battle of ideas. It's a battle of wits. He didn't have a brain. He didn't belong in a debate. And I've done this consistently throughout my life, Barry. I see things differently because I see the numbers. I see how they work. So I do look at it from a factual base. This is where I get upset with economists that are on the national stage. I'll use Mark Watson.
Okay.
He's at Yale, and he put out what they did was they changed the formula that they used to show that the current economic condition in America was better than it was. He's one of President Obama's advisors.
Yeah.
Okay. What that is like taking 1 + 2 + 3 and saying the answer is 6.
Mm-hmm.
Deciding that the 2 no longer gives you the answer you want, so you take it out. You got 1 + 3 is equal to 6.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stay consistent.
Well, that's crazy. You know, one of the things I wanted to bring up before I forget, too, is I heard somewhere, and now it's been maybe, it might be a couple months old, but I think it's valid. There was a thing that was brought up with gold, that there was a cap put on it. I can't remember if it was like $100 shoot up. It wasn't on the cap on the way down, but it was a cap on the way going up.
That it could only go up 100 in a day.
Or something.
Yeah.
What did you hear about that, and what's your ideas on...
Again, it's government trying to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems we have right now is the reason that gold price has stayed so low for so long is not because the economy is better. It is because the government is putting in sell orders to counterbalance anybody that buys.
Sure.
To keep that price down. The reason the government needs that price down is because when Germany cashed in those $300 billion worth of IOUs from the government, from the Treasury Department, they told them, we don't want more IOU. We want to cash it in for the gold that backs it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've paid, I believe now, in 2 years, and I think maybe it's 3 years. No, it's 2. It is 2. Because they gave us 7 years to pay it off.
Okay.
And in the 2 years that we've been working on it, for 2013 and 2014, we have paid off about $125 billion.
Okay.
Gold at its current price. If gold went up, we wouldn't be able to get it.
Oh.
The government wouldn't be able to buy it so that they could pay this off. So they are putting in the sell orders. I had a friend that's a CPA in Colorado. Sent me, he said, wait a minute, you've said this before, and I need to know. So I sent him details on how their problem is. I said, look at these dates, ... He wrote back, he said, boy, he said, you got it nailed. He said, I wondered why it had stayed down there. He said, this explains it. And when they buy, they don't buy for a month. They'll buy options for 14 months, 16 months, 18 months, 10 years. They'll buy options on the gold production. Now, there's not a whole lot of activity out there for those long-distance ones, but if they can keep the price down, even for the future that people are looking at, then they can obtain the local stuff. And then most of the bets went to the current contracts, the immediate following years. But you and I can't compete with that because they have a printing press. It doesn't matter what they bid, they can cover it. It doesn't matter how much they lose, they can cover it with the printing press.
One thing I found was interesting, and this was quite a few months ago you talked about, but this was in New York City, I believe, where you had the different countries all set up, and as the gold was shifted, they would shift it back and forth.
That was in the World Trade Center.
There you go. Can you explain how that worked?
Sure. They'd send their proxies through to the processing center that was up on the 14th floor of the World Trade Center, wherever it was, and they would tabulate it. So, for instance, you owed your wife 10 ounces of gold.
Okay.
And she owed me 15 ounces of gold. And I owed you 25 ounces of gold. Since 10 was the lowest common denominator, they would shift 10. They would equalize it. And what they would do is they would show that you sent 10 to her. She sent 10 to me. I sent 10 to you.
Okay.
It was like the Three Stooges one, where they had the $2 that they owed, and the guy had $1.
Yeah.
Curly had $1, so he paid Mo. Mo paid Larry. Larry paid Curly. Curly went right back around. And so everybody wound up exactly where they were, and then they're scratching their head, how did this work out?
Yeah.
One of the big problems that we had was when the center went down in the 9/11 attack. This is why the government immediately moved the military in and sealed off those tunnels, is because the flames were so hot that it was melting the gold, and they had to reconstruct it. This is, despite what they tell you about everything going to the army base for sifting so that they could find human remains, that was a sidelight. They were looking to extract the precious metal that had been melted, gold, silver, and platinum, palladium, all that had been melted. And then the hard part was they were in the middle of transferring, so they had to go back to the previous day's tabulations to even have a place to start. And because of the melted computers and that kind of stuff that also put some gold in there, they actually came out ahead on the deal.
Oh, okay. You know, I thought that was really interesting about, you know, when you talked about how they were moving the gold around, you know, on a daily basis, what was going on.
With little wire carts that look like mini grocery carts.
Really? And so they would go
and they would have a representative from each country, and they would watch to make sure that the proper amount was put in, and that the guy that was actually pushing the cart didn't take any, because that belonged to individual countries. It didn't belong to any one man.
So how would they keep somebody from stealing? I mean, how would they slap their hand and say, you can't do that?
It was pretty well secured, number one. But number two, if you were caught, maybe they just turn you over to one of those nations that knows a great deal about torture.
Oh, I see. Very interesting. You know, Michael, we're actually about an hour into this. Do you have a little bit longer to go?
Sure.
Okay. Michael, what are some other things that you're seeing that's kind of on the headlines, or that you're seeing right now with the paperwork on your lap that you have printed stories? What are some things that you're seeing that are very important?
The number one problem that we had in 2007 was the collapse of the housing market. Would it surprise you to know that the qualified residential mortgages, the QRMs, are right back on a 333 basis?
You know what was so funny about that? We were just talking to somebody else, and they were applying for a home loan, and they had to put 0% down to get that loan, just like they were way back when.
Yeah, and this is the problem that we're having. They don't qualify for the loan. When, for instance, like when I bought my house, 20% down, and it could be no more than 25% of my income could go to the mortgage
for the whole year.
On a monthly basis.
Monthly.
Okay, now, and this is where the 333 comes in. It's an old acronym: 3% down, 3% interest, 3 months you're broke.
Okay,
it's a 333, and the bank, the pressure is on these guys to get houses moving again under the table. You don't hear that officially, but under the table, to get houses moving, to get the housing market back to where it was, and ta-da, they're back to the 333 program that caused the problem in the first place.
You know, one of the things I found very interesting as we're looking at houses and stuff like that, you've heard the app called Zillow?
Yes.
It's kind of an interesting thing, and I'm going to pull it up here, and as I'm talking, I'm going to pull up our address, and one of the things I found out with Zillow that was really interesting is it shows... and I'm going to pull it up here in a sec. And as we're talking, Michael, I'm going to keep finding out. We'll talk here in a sec. But the thing is, until people really start picking through what's going on, they'll never see what's going on. And I think what you're talking about whets people's appetites, and if they're willing to look, they'll find out more than they ever wanted to.
About how wrong things are?
Well, just, housing. Well, there's even a thing with the vehicle report. How many vehicles now are getting repossessed because people are defaulting on vehicle loans?
Well, again, there's too much debt. With the increase in things that are coming along from the government, the increase in taxes that we're facing, just to have a vehicle that runs, you're gonna be real lucky.
Well, I just I put $6,000 of repair into my truck because I got 130,000 miles on my truck. That's cheap compared to a new truck nowadays.
Right, and that's the problem, is that in retrospect, these people that drove the 1940s vehicles until the 1970s, until Dad and Mom had both died, they understood that a vehicle was just a means of transportation that was easier than a horse.
Yeah. And
that's all it is. It has no real value. That's why when you drive a new one off of the lot, you lose 5% of the value. 5%, 10%, 20% of what you bought just is gone. It's all dealer markup because it's shiny and it's new. You're paying for something new.
So get back to the Zillow app, as I found out. I know anybody can put their address in there and look, but so we got these houses here that are all in the red.
Right.
These are all the ones that are for sale.
Right.
Now, there's quite a few of the blue ones, not as many as red, but there is still quite a few. All of them are in auction or foreclosure, and there's quite a few of them.
Right.
And that's in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So you could probably take any USA city. Now, why are we not seeing those?
Because the government addressed the problem. Remember Barack Obama?
Mm-hmm.
We have cleaned up the problem, and once I've announced that it's clean, it's no longer a problem.
Yeah, I mean...
And again, here's the other side. I'll lay you odds, 90% of those are through Fannie or Freddie.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because they were given the 0% interest, weren't they?
Right, because that was the federal market. That was the federal benchmark set by the Fed.
That's crazy.
It is. It's stupid.
Well, we talked to a bank here a while back and just kind of asking them some questions. You can get an in-home loan, or you can get a I can't think of the loan thing it's called, but basically it's a loan that they sell off to like different companies, whatever.
The derivatives.
Yeah. Well, but when I talked to you about that, you even said an in-home loan, even though it's still at the local bank, they're still going to sell it.
They can still sell it, yes.
But what's interesting, you pay a higher interest rate, and then within 5 years it balloons.
It balloons again, yes.
So really,
and the balloon has to go because the banks, the financial sector, has to make so much money on mortgages. That's why those balloon payments are in there. They have to have a profit. That's one of the big concerns is Stanley Morgan. Morgan Stanley, I guess, is the proper. I reversed it. Though that bank is in real financial trouble. Well, geez, that's one of the big boys.
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs just lost $835 million. Well, they're not going to pay that. That's a cost of them doing business. They're going to pass it on to the people that are the shareholders, the people that are invested in that bank.
And shareholders, can you explain why having money in the bank is not a good idea?
There's a little portion of the law that says that if you put money in the bank, it belongs to the bank, not you.
Yep.
That it actually is back in the federal system. Also, they can, overnight, decide not to honor any check or any withdrawal that you put on a savings account or a checking account, money market account, anything like that. They can withhold payment on that for 180 days.
180 days.
180 days.
And so let's say you go ahead and write a check to pay your electric bill. They could hold that, couldn't they?
Yeah, and then what's the electric company going to operate on? If everybody's check is stopped. Mm-hmm. And this is what the people of Cyprus found out. Now, again, that was an American-inspired, Tim Geithner-inspired situation. They wanted to see what Americans would, how they would react. And all they got was a collective yawn out of Americans. They know they can do it here, and that it could well not be a 30% haircut, but there could be a 30% haircut on wealth in this country that you're looking at just for the government to be able to pay its bills this coming year. And when I say 30% wealth, you're not just the savings account, not just what you have in the bank, but how much is your house valued at? How much equity do you have in your house? What's the equity on your cars? What's the equity on your personal possessions? What's the equity on your properties above and beyond your house, of farmland or whatever? And they can walk in and take 30% of everything and present you with the bill. Well, okay, you're a farmer. Now, where are you going to get that extra 30% from?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The only thing that you really have of value right now is your land that will grow crops.
Yeah.
And they're going to assess it 30% of its value? It's like I say, I sit there and I look at this. I'm paranoid. I'll admit it. I watch what they've done.
Yeah.
But there's not many people that have sat in the seat that I sat in and had the director of revenue clear the room of everybody but you and him and then ask you, what is it going to take for you to give us an audit that we can live with?
Yeah.
What is it going to take for you to give us the audit results that we want? And I flat told him, you put it in writing that I can break the law. Well, they're not going to give a peon like me that right. But as we're seeing with Eric Holder, Our government right now is picking and choosing which laws it's going to enforce.
True.
And that is a major problem. That's why most Americans have really and truly left the workforce, that they've given up. Because what's the sense? The government's going to, even if I manage to get out of the way of my debt load, they're going to change the rules on my kids. They're going to change the rules on me. And then how much of it am I really going to owe?
Well, and then these people that don't have work anymore, now they're homeless, living in what they call 10 cities, and now they're picking them up and they're taking them into like camps, whatever. So,
well, that's the least we could do. What they should do is provide them the same kind of housing that they're giving to the illegals that are coming across the border.
Yeah.
At least, at the minimum.
Yeah.
They should house them in gymnasiums or something rather than letting them live in a tent.
You know, let me get a little conspiracy on you, but here at the local mall here in Cheyenne, and I kind of want to preface this with this before I get to it. Back in the summer of 2014, it was found out that the Wyoming Highway Patrol had stopped 4 Islamic men here in Wyoming. It wasn't really well said except through some, you might have heard about it too, but they had I want to say RPGs or like a grenade launcher, whatever.
They did. They had 2 rocket-propelled grenade guns, and then they also had an assortment of the grenades.
Yeah, and what was also the cherry on top is they had, like, I believe, like 130 different malls that they wanted, that they had. I'm not saying they're going to hit, but they had these malls on a list.
A sleeper cell can be in the United States for years, and we wouldn't know anything about it. That just like the one that woke up in France.
Yeah.
Those are here. We know they're here.
Yep.
But the problem is trying to find them. And again, if somebody decides, if you happen to be in the wrong spot at the wrong time, you can get caught in one of those attacks.
And the reason why I brought this up is that at the mall here, the head of the mosque, he runs a business right in the center there. And people that I know see Islamic-like guys going back and forth talking to them, and then they'll leave, and then they come and talk. And it was interesting because someone said to me, how do you hide something but out in the open? I mean, if you look like you're doing nothing, then you're probably not. You know, most people are not going to pay attention to these guys coming in and talking to somebody, but my ears kind of perk up when the head of the Islamic here is at the mall here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and there's Islamic guys going back and forth. There's something there that's kind of unsettling.
This is one of the reasons that foot traffic at the mall has declined.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that are not Muslim,
yeah,
they don't feel comfortable around those people.
Yeah.
But what we've really done is, instead of making the Muslim move, what we've done is we've seeded them a business in this state.
Well, you know, and somebody I know works with some other people that are with Islamic people from the mosque here, and they're like, hey, they're the greatest people, but I don't think people realize even a moderate Muslim wants the extremist Muslim to get out there and start killing people.
One of the problems that and this was written 800 years ago by Marco Polo.
Okay.
The radical Muslim is the one cutting the head off the infidel.
Mm-hmm.
The moderate Muslim is the one holding his feet.
True. Yep.
Winston Churchill had pretty much the same observation of Islam in 1899, saying, you can't trust these guys. You cannot travel alone. You cannot trust these people because you don't know when they're going to turn.
Yeah.
And again, it's great. I got the same thing, you know. I agree with the president when he says most of the Muslims are peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
But those aren't the ones that are running the mosque. Those aren't the ones that are in leadership positions. Yeah. That's the problem that you have. Again, you need somebody to register these people. Our government should be registering them so that at least you can monitor where they're at and what they're doing. The 2 guys that were in Boston got glowing reviews by the people that were in their school with them, and yet, neighbors thought they were great people. They're the ones that, geez, they set off bombs right in the Boston Marathon. And again, we had movies back in the 70s and the 80s, like Black Sunday, where it was a Muslim attack on the Super Bowl, or it was, some sporting event or some place where a lot of people were gathered, and they would hit it. What would happen, and again, this is just supposition, but what would happen if it was the 4th of July? Say, 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
How many people would even know or even recognize the fact that bombs were going off when you've got the stuff going off overhead and that there's bombs on the ground that are sending out shrapnel that's killing people?
Well, people might even think it's cool. I mean, how many people did not recognize Martin Luther King Day, Monday? I seen an article, not an article, there was a YouTube video by a gentleman named Mark Dice, and he was actually interviewing people. I didn't actually see the video, but I seen a caption where people were actually going, "Oh, did he just die?" Martin Luther King. I mean, what I'm saying is, people may actually just think, "Well, that's really cool. This is actually happening."
That they don't, and again, they don't recognize. We are so unsophisticated in the ways of the world anymore. The president says the war's over because that's what he wants in his mind. That's his goal. You want the war over. Nobody wants war. But the fact that you can't recognize the fact when it's going on in your own backyard, and whether it's 11 people or 13 people or 40 people or whatever it happens to be, the problem is those are war casualties.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in school, I had a buddy that actually was a captain in the Green Beret. At right around the My Lai area, he actually led a patrol, and he's the only one that got back. 37 guys.
Wow.
And that's what he told me. He says, I live with the ghosts of 37 people every single day. But that was when we had the policy you didn't send them out armed. Only one guy was carrying weapons. Well, they soon cottoned on to the fact that it was the medic that was carrying the arms. They could kill him. Nobody else then could get to the ammo. They couldn't get scattered. And but again, then we prosecuted a guy for going into My Lai and killing him. Do I condone that? You're in a war.
Mm-hmm.
There are no rules in war except survival.
Yep.
And you've got to understand that it's either you or them. Mm-hmm. And how many guys enter a war, and they'll tell you from statistics that of the infantry guys, only one man in a unit may actually be firing effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we killed 47 guys. Okay, now then, if only one guy was firing effectively, does he get all 47 kills?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take real accurate fire when you're playing with atomic bombs or you're playing with some of this stuff, poison in water, for instance, a waterway. It doesn't take a whole lot to screw it. But I'm telling you right now, our government policies, our government blindness, our government's inability to handle the truth. That's the old a few good men line.
Yeah.
You can't handle the truth. They are politicians. And the truth is uncomfortable. The truth, they feel, will cost them votes. And they're not going to do anything that's going to cost them votes.
Mm-hmm. This is something that people will probably want to ask, too, is one of the news stories I had just wanted to mention to you was, you heard of a gentleman named Jim Willie?
I've heard of it.
He was basically saying that the Swiss depeg triggers massive derivative crisis. Potential end to the euro. That's going to happen here too.
Exactly. And here's the problem that we're having right now. You can see this. Part of the reason that oil is down so low is not just the production or the lack of demand, but it's because the dollar is the world's benchmark for oil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because we've printed 3 times more money than we had before with no more GDP, price of oil should be going up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The reason it's going down is because the dollar, even though we've printed 3 times more than we had just 6 years ago, the dollar is stronger today across the board against every other currency because they're in such bad economic shape.
Mm-hmm.
Every other country in the world, by comparison to where we at, they don't have enough to grow their own food. We do.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else above and beyond that is gravy. We can take care of our population on a food basis. Nobody else can do that.
Yeah.
Unless they're starving their people. This is what gives us an advantage. And because these other countries, these other dollars, other fiats have fallen so much, are in such bad shape, America looks pretty good right now. And it's hard to believe. I just can't get involved in that by getting my head around it, that I can see how much my standard of living has declined.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're better off than other people. You go into my house and I'll lay odds you're not going to find a new computer. The newest computer you're going to find is 8 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have new things. We've stopped buying. I'm getting close to retiring.
Sure.
I've got to get prepared for it. I'm driving a car that's a 1997. I'm not going to spend money that I may not be able to replace.
Mm-hmm.
But by the same token, I'm taking steps to get my money consolidated into cash. I'm getting my money, I'm using it to buy surplus food. I'm using it to prepare for the future. Because I don't know if tomorrow, and this happened in Arkansas, by the way, they went into a store, or went down to go into a store that they had always shopped at for some necessities.
Mm-hmm.
The store was closed.
Wow.
It was a Kroger, in the Kroger
like
family.
King Supers, yeah.
Yeah. And it was gone. Well, geez, so they just went to the next one. But what happens when they can't get a fresh supply on a daily basis? How much do they have that can actually outlast? Their storerooms are not that big.
Well, that's what's happening in Venezuela right now. They literally have lines, and they don't know when they're going to get more food now.
We had the same thing when we had oil back in 1972 and 70. The Arab embargo. I can remember going through those lines. I can remember the price of oil basically doubled overnight. I mean, geez, I went from 25 cents to 50 cents. I was upset. I actually had a roommate that was storing gasoline in cans when it was 45 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to use this. If it goes any higher, I can't afford to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they don't look at that today. They just say, oh, well, I'll put it on a credit card, which is debt.
Yeah.
Because you're not paying for it right then.
Was what happened with the Swiss, and now I think Denmark's even thinking about doing the same thing too here, going back to gold. I believe that might be the right country. I'm not sure.
Denmark owes too much. It won't be Denmark.
Oh,
it might be Germany.
Okay. But I know they're getting more gold now too. When you were talking about our economy, with the oil price going down, it almost seems like, remember when they had that massive earthquake, and I think it was Sri Lanka or wherever it was at, where it killed all those people, that tidal wave came in?
Are you talking about Japan or the one down in 2004?
2004.
Christmas 2004.
Yeah, that's right. And it seems to me that's what's kind of happening. Everything's pulling back, and it seems like, hey, everything's just fine. But when does that tidal wave hit on our shores? That massive crash,
and it's coming. It's coming because of economic policy. That's just. I really don't have a lot of items to look at when you're looking at pictures of what's coming down the road. I just know that there's inflation. Mm-hmm. I know that the inflation, by manipulation of government policy, has not allowed the full impact of that inflation hit us. But it's coming, and it has to come because they have to make up for this money that they've spent on social programs that they haven't collected revenues for.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens? What happens on the day where they put the bonds out, and the Federal Reserve says, we're not printing any more money to buy it. We're going to end this buyback program.
Yeah.
We're not going to monetize our own debt. You guys are stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That is a sudden, abrupt stop. You brought up Amos a while back.
Yeah.
Ezekiel, Nehemiah. All these guys saw problems, but to me, the problem happened behind them. Mm-hmm. They were looking outward from the center.
Yeah.
And as a result, they each saw the same event somewhat, but they were seeing it from different perspectives and with a different view.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a mountain blocked the full impact here, and so you saw something different. Maybe this one was just an open plane and it just rolled across. The problem happened behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're reporting on what they were given a vision of, and they saw it from a different perspective. But unfortunately, when you go through and look at it, they all are claiming the same event. They all are describing the same natural occurrence. To get us wrapped up, do you believe in global warming?
No way. No.
No way. John Casey, I don't know if you've seen some of his stuff. Yeah, he used to be a White House advisor and got kicked out. He was with NASA, and he documented how scientists of the world, the climatologists, manipulated the temperature readings and stuff to get global warming off. $2 trillion they've taken from Americans. $2 trillion they've taken from Americans with these EPA standards. Mm-hmm. Yes, we got clean air in Pittsburgh. We got clean water in many places that we didn't have before. But my problem is we have lost our GDP because of it. And this old, well-established agency is one of the ones that's going to come in and ruin America by putting too much regulation on. You cannot start a business today without EPA blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Why the devil is that? It puts us in a point where you're sitting there, Barry, and it's going to overcome us, this mountain. And you say a tidal wave, I call it a mountain.
Yeah.
But it's coming out of Washington, D.C., and it's not going to let us breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And when that day hits, those that aren't prepared, those that don't have stuff to get through it, and again, that's anybody else's guess, that's not mine, but the stuff to get through it, how much that's going to take, you're asking for trouble, because you aren't, survival is not going to be possible if you aren't prepared.
You know, you're talking about Nehemiah and Amos and that. One of the things that really, for me, I see is a tripping point for people is because of the teaching on, the blessings all on the land of Israel over there. And everybody's looking at, okay, this is all. What I'm trying to say is they're trying to take a square peg and put it into a circle,
Right.
And when you start looking at, now people would have listened to the last interview with the House of Israel, the scriptures start making understanding, and you start realizing that you're no longer in a position of it's happening over there.
Right.
It's going to happen on your doorstep.
This is why I laugh at Steve all the time. I hit him with this jab every time I see him. Is he ruined Christmas for me?
Yeah.
Because when we sang the song, O Come, Emmanuel,
mm-hmm.
and ransom captive Israel, I was looking at Israel being the Jews.
Yeah.
Israel is us.
Yep.
Israel is us. He proved it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden, who's the captive ransom that needs to be ransomed? Who are the captives? I think it's the coast. I think it starts on the coast and works its way in. Where it ends is anybody's guess. But we owe people. They are holding our IOUs, and sooner or later, those people are going to come to get them.
Well, and Michael, I just seen a news story, and for the life of me, I'll find it. But I had blogged about it on my news blog, and it was about basically saying how. Oh gosh, I'll find it here. But China was saying something about, and I'm going to find it. I'm going to go down my news blog here and find out. But it was a news story, and it said this: China to strike U.S. from within if finances clap and war erupts. Then it says tweets deleted, warning of U.S. Customs inception of heavy weaponry from China at several U.S. ports. Attack on the west and east coast. You can see a picture right there.
And it's there. Like I say, unfortunately, and they own property in America,
mm-hmm.
whereas an American cannot own property in China. Chinese can own property here. We haven't. Our politics have been blind to what's been happening. They never thought it was going to get to this point. I'm not blaming the current administration. This has been going on.
Oh yeah.
But the current administration is the epitome of stupidity in this regard, because they don't see any danger.
Mm-hmm.
All they see is that you have something, you have a higher standard of living than somebody that's in a mud hut in Kenya, and therefore, guess what?
Yep.
You are ripe for plucking.
Huh. Yeah. And going back with the House of Israel, if people really understood this, they would understand how to prepare for what's coming.
Better. They would understand better.
Okay.
I don't think even, just like Elijah, as he was led to a spot where he had temporary sanctuary. But when the supplies there ran out, then he was led to another spot.
Sure.
And it's going to be the same thing. We're going to have to, the initial supply that you have is just enough to get you over to absorb the shock and then try to be able to move somewhere else.
Yeah. In your hearts of hearts, with all the stuff that's coming out and when it does hit, where do you feel that God's calling maybe Christians too? Is there a certain, because I know Pastor Stephen Grant was talking about cities of refuge, and I'm just kind of maybe picking what you might be feeling in your heart.
Let's go back. I wrote a rant again a couple of years back, but it was called, I titled it The Death Traps, and those were the cities. Fuel can't get in, energy can't get in. If you can't get fuel or energy and food into those cities, what good are they? They cease to exist. They have no other purpose. And depending on what happens to the infrastructure, again in an attack, what happens to the people that are in there?
Yeah.
Those people that are wedded to a big city are in trouble. By the same token, look where we're at. You can't grow food here. Not enough to last you for a year.
Oh yeah.
And
we tried, yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's tough. I've turned my backyard into a garden, and it's the same thing. I get tomatoes and stuff, to get you up to maybe December.
Yeah.
Peppers and stuff, but you can't grow enough staples in this climate at this altitude to really make a go of it.
And June of 2014, I want to say it was June 25th, but it was somewhere later June. We actually went camping in the mountains. When we came back, it froze. Our garden pretty much was toast.
We had 74 days in Cheyenne this year between freezes. The last freeze of spring hit us in the middle of June when they got the 8 inches of snow on the interstate. Had to close down I-80. We got our first snow 74 days later.
You can't.
And that was an 8-inch snow. Remember the same thing?
Yeah.
It was enough that it was here for quite a while, and the temperatures just didn't get below freezing. They stayed below freezing for almost 54 hours.
That's crazy. Those are the reasons why you just really can't grow. And another idea is we have a cow. Of course she's not here. She's getting bred right now, but just to grow a cow, I can't, even on 2 acres, one cow, the grass out there won't suffice the cow. I have to bring in hay.
This was one of the fun ones I had in economics because I was born in Nebraska. There they count the number of cows per acre. Here we count the number of acres per cow.
That's right.
And it was very difficult to get the agricultural kids at the school to understand you're counting acres per cow. I'm counting cows per acre because the grass was so much different. The growing season was so much different. Just go 50 miles south. Their spring starts about 3 weeks before ours.
Yeah.
By the same token, their fall can be 9-12 weeks later to start than ours. Like you said, we had snow, heavy snow, debilitating cold, and oops, they're still in summer.
Yeah.
I mean, we hadn't even reached the end of summer. 74 days, and I'm going, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's the hard things about living here in Cheyenne because of the growing.
So was Amos or Ezekiel looking at Cheyenne and somebody else maybe looking at?
Well, that could have been,
at Kansas.
That could have been really. It really could have been.
See, again, if you're looking at if you're looking not in the same directions, if you got your back to the event but are just seeing the effects, depending on what you're looking at, and they didn't tell us what it was beforehand. The only thing we know is that Amos saw a basket of summer fruit. Well, it's got to have been harvested.
Yeah, it's.
Was he on the south side or the north side of the hemisphere, of the equator?
You're thinking Amos?
Yeah.
Well, he could have been. Yeah.
He could have been on the south side.
Yeah, he could have.
I just thought I'd throw that one out.
Well, yeah, because what we're talking about, most people just don't have no concept of even thinking about, because we're thinking that, hey, everything's going to be over there on the Middle East over there.
Yeah.
And when people, for me, when you really see the word in a different way, when God's really kind of opened you up from, because so often you see in a church, we're taught to believe this way, and then it permeates and then it grows out and like, oh, everyone's, and then things get kind of ridiculous because you get the out fringes of, okay, all this is going to happen, and it goes outside the Word of God. But when you're staying within the Word of God and you start understanding, and when the Holy Spirit's revealing to you, you start realizing that this thing is bigger than what people are even talking about.
And this is one of the things you talked about the Spirit. I honestly believe everybody could hear the Spirit.
Sure.
Honestly. The problem is, far too often, we don't want the answer that they're giving us in prayer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to say, well, he gave me the answer. He gave me this. Great. The problem is, it happened to be what you prayed for.
Yeah.
And you got it. Well, what makes him better than me? Well, the thing is, I didn't understand that what he was telling me at the time. Did I like working for the government? No. But it gave me an understanding of how they work, so I can see from the inside a lot better than I can looking from the outside, trying to see into the dark window.
Well, that makes you more of a like Braveheart. You're able to deal with the thing because you have more information you can deal with. You can attack it easier than someone that doesn't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah, and
you're your sheepdog. You're a sheepdog.
Right. I've seen it, so.
Huh, Michael? What are some things that you're seeing that's on the news that's been happening?
The biggest one where we're talking about 2015 is Peter Schiff, who's the head of the CEO of Euro Pacific, and he told the world on CNN News that low oil prices are disaster.
Yeah.
Recession is on its way. Yes, we're benefiting, the consumer is benefiting from it, but governments need that revenue of the higher price. They're going to find a way to turn it around. Now, even the government flacks are saying it's going to be 12 to 18 months before the prices start to appreciate again. But they keep going down. And this is the problem that you have. Until these other governments stop printing, or until the economy hits rock bottom, it's not going to happen. But here's my question. What's the biggest consumer of energy that we've ever known?
The biggest consumer of energy?
The biggest consumer of energy that man has created.
The government.
Government.
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah.
Wars consume it.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have a war, the consumption rate for fuel would just drop dramatically again.
Mm-hmm.
So while they're preaching peace, they can't afford that either.
Well, I'm even seeing some areas, articles bringing up that oil could go down to $25 a barrel or even fall further.
I don't know how low it can go. The thing is, man has to get it out, and there's a cost to that. But the oil was put there. It's a natural. And by the EPA fighting this, where they don't want pollutants in the air, then you get a guy like John Casey comes out and says, actually the world is cooling because the sun is cooling. It's in a cooling period.
Yeah.
Geez, I would much rather have the pollutants up there in the air keeping the greenhouse gas, making the most out of every ounce of sunlight we get, rather than going the other way and freezing my tootsies off, because I can take the heat much better than I can take cold.
I would take the heat myself, but especially for us, you can definitely tell that things are cooling down because we've been cooler than normal here.
Yes, and they said that worldwide, December was the warmest month on record, the warmest December they've ever had in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here, our temperatures were 10 to 15 degrees below normal day after day after day after day.
I'm seeing, like, Mark Watts, there's still time to cash in on the collapse of crude oil. I mean, they're talking that oil is just going to keep going down. It sounds like.
Well, but again, at some point it's going to rebound. If you're in the bets and you're going down and down only, you're in deep trouble. You've got to have some future contracts out there going the other way to offset those losses, or you could risk everything that you own. There's no guarantee on the market moving one direction. And this is where Obama and his policies have forced the market to move upward. But there's no GDP to sustain that growth.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it's going to affect where I work at, being with trucking and that. There's so much that we do with welding and different things like that.
I'll go there. You're talking about trucking. What are you adding to the GDP?
In trucking?
In trucking.
Well, it really...
Truckers don't add anything to the GDP.
They just transport back and forth.
They add to the economy by providing a service, but they don't add to GDP because they don't make anything. They wear out tires that need to be replaced. They wear out transmissions that need to be replaced. But they don't, as a whole, most of their cost is service to get something from one point to another.
And that's what my job is, service, because, to kind of give people an idea, they have an air separation plant that separates the different gases, and of course then they come up and then we make the different gases for welding and different oxygen. People breathe oxygen. But I'm not a machinist. I'm not making something. All I'm doing is I'm taking something, repackaging it, and then send it out.
Yeah. And it works that way. It works that way.
And so, I was thinking about that just driving through Cheyenne here yesterday. There's so many service jobs here.
And very few GDP jobs.
We had, I think it was Gator Industries. They produced, or maybe it was somebody else. I can't remember. But they made ovens, and they made different things. They're gone.
Well, but look, and you talk about things, but look at the window plant here in town. Makes windows.
Yeah.
Okay. How much of that stuff, it's American assembled. But how much of that stuff originates with American raw ore or raw material and winds up as a finished product in America?
Not much at all.
Not much at all. It is an American product. They put right on it, made in America. It's assembled in America. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The glass comes from Canada.
Yeah. Yep.
So don't give me this stuff. Our GDP has disappeared. And unless we have a commensurate rise in GDP to match the printed dollars, we are in trouble.
The metal tanks that come in for us to fill up when they come in new, they're made in Canada.
Well, geez, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
No, I'm just. This is why I get so upset with the economists that turn around and equate GDP and economy as if they're interchangeable terms. They are not.
Yeah, and I think unless people really sit down and think about their job and actually think, okay, is this really a service job, or am I actually making something like a machinist? I think majority of people find out they're actually doing a service job.
Anymore. I'll go with the guys that make the big bucks. The bankers or the guys on Wall Street. They don't make anything. They transfer money. They hold other people's wealth.
True.
They make nothing.
They're like government.
They add, and the only reason that they measure the wealth in fiat is because if they measured it in something that was real, like gold, how many ounces of gold is this? They wouldn't. That's the only thing that they have is still fiat. They're government creations.
Do you see, right now I see gold is at $12.93. Do you see gold going higher?
Gold won't go higher until that tidal wave you're talking about hits.
Okay.
And by then it's too late.
And we could see this tidal wave happen by maybe this fall, because Amos talks about a basket of ripe fruit.
Well,
we could.
I mean, and we're back at the same thing. I'm not sure. I would be real surprised if we survive as a country 2016.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be an election in 2016. I think they'll find some pretense to delay, just like they did in 1812, that they'll delay the election. They'll find some, and there's a precedent out there for it, and so I think that they could very well just say, oh, there's too much turmoil, we'll just delay the election.
Yeah. Michael, we've almost talked 2 hours. This was good.
Okay.
Here, do you have 15 more minutes? We'll make a full hour out of it.
Okay.
All right. Is there some other things you want to touch on?
Yeah. One of the ones is that really is hindering us is our government's criminalization of activity, economic activity. One of the things that's criminalized is the export of oil. Well, that's what's used in the article. That's not entirely true.
Mm-hmm.
The oil that was coming off of the North Slope of Alaska went to Japan, went to Asia, because that's a closer market rather than bringing it in. Sure. The only oil that got there that hit American shore was when the Valdez sunk.
Oh, yeah.
Ran aground and spilled all that oil. That's the only stuff. The rest of it all goes across because, again, it's part of the worldwide market, and it's closer there than it is here. Mm-hmm. So they are not, they're not really the numbers or the production that you think you have, just like Keystone Pipeline. It's not going to carry anything American. It's going to be carrying Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after it's built, then everything becomes a service job. Nothing becomes a creation job.
Yeah.
No GDP.
Warren Buffett, he bought, was it Burlington Northern?
One of those, yeah.
Yeah. So now he owns, I think, a lot of oil wells, too. I mean, he literally has a pipeline and rail.
And this is why he fights Keystone so hard, is because it'll make his investment worthless.
Interesting. It hurts Americans, but he wants got to keep his own intentions going for himself.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's supposed to be out there, but like always, he's looking out for number one. So does George Soros. That's how they got to be so rich. Our jobs market, real quick, you keep talking about the jobs market. I get asked this all the time. The jobs market is not really there. We continue to decline in full-time jobs, and the government does not differentiate. A job is a job is a job. Well, when you have one person that can now fill 3 jobs, and just to get to full-time hours, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't count that. They say, oh, well, we have 3 people employed. No, you don't. You have one guy employed 3 times because he lost a full-time job. He's back now working 3 part-time jobs. By the same token, why is he working 3 part-time jobs? Because a part-time job doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't allow him to maintain a lifestyle that he has become accustomed to. He's got bills that are due. He's got a mortgage. He's got heating bills. He's got food bills that have to be met.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to work 3 jobs. And yet they count it as 3 independent jobs. No, they're not. One guy's got them all. And this is how the numbers are so phony. Our workforce participation is down at its lowest. If you eliminated from the workforce right now the jobs that are held by illegals, whether they're here on a student visa and having a job, or if they're here from South America or Central America and they hold a job. Eliminate those people out of it, because you're counting those as workforce participation. You find out that the American workforce participation rate is not the 62% that they're talking about, but closer to 52%.
Wow.
That's a big difference. Mm-hmm. That's 30 million people.
That's quite a bit.
Yes. Particularly when you consider that we still are struggling to get to 150 million jobs.
Man.
And there's 20% of our jobs market number is phony. Ta-da, and I'll tell that to them right to their face.
Well, really, our government is not an American government. It's like a foreign government anymore.
It's being run like one.
Yeah.
Yes, and the idea, when we got into the idea that there was social programs, that I needed to take care of somebody. I used to do that at my church. I used to do that through my local charities. You don't do that anymore because, hey, I'm getting taxed for it. Mm-hmm. The heck with them.
Yeah.
And they still do quite well. But in relationship to what the real dollar terms are and what they're actually doing, the charity donations are actually down then. Even though there's more people asking for their services.
When do people get to the point where they're fed up with working? I mean, when do they more and more people start getting fed up?
I think you're going to see it when the millennials come along. Mm-hmm. Because, first of all, they have the highest unemployment rate. Mm-hmm. When they were teenagers, they were the number one group. Well, the guys behind them are even worse. But as these millennials, they supported Obama because he talked well.
Yeah.
They supported Obama because he said things they wanted to hear. They're catching on to the fact that none of the problems have been solved. They've been talked about. Talking doesn't solve it. Mm-hmm. But again, the question that you really got to ask is that government's job? Under the Constitution, is that government's job? And you look at the preamble, and it talks about promoting the general welfare, promoting these things.
Yeah.
Then when you get into the Constitution itself, somebody changed the language and it said provide.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was stuck in one spot. I honestly believe that it was still promote. That until Lyndon Johnson came along, it was still promote. That's the way it always been applied. Now all of a sudden we have the Great Society, we got to provide.
Yeah.
And so many people are going, why should I go to work for a $3,000 a month job or a $3,500 a month job when I can stay home, not have the expense of getting ready, not have the trouble of having to put up with a boss, blah, 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 and pull down $2,800? Because guess what? My health care bill is going to be more than $700 a month.
Yeah.
Or my cost to get a car, maintain a car back and forth. My cost to get dressed properly, blah, 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 you name it. My cost for continuing education is going to cost me more than the difference, and I'm not taxed on it because I fall into a lower tax bracket.
Yeah.
This is why I'm a proponent of a flat tax. On income, no deductions, anywhere. You have income, you pay 6%. If you make $1,000, you're paying 6%, $60. If you're making $100, you're paying 6%. If you make $1 million a month, you're still paying 6%. No deductions.
Yep.
No deductions.
And then you become fair for everyone.
It becomes fair for everyone because everyone's got skin in the game. Then they find out how much these stupid programs are actually going to cost them. They won't be so interested in voting for the guy that says, oh, I'll give you this.
Well, now they want to do this Medicaid expansion here in Wyoming.
Yeah.
But they already done it, I think, out in Tennessee, but they're including the refugees into it.
Yeah, same thing. Again, we're not differentiate because remember, just like the newspaper in California that was assaulted because they printed illegal. Well, no, they're not illegals. Then what are they? They've broken a law. Yep. That makes them illegal.
Yep.
Oh, well, wait a minute. We're not enforcing that law. Still doesn't matter. Their country enforces the law. And I think whatever country they're from, they should have the same penalties imposed here that they have imposed in their country. If an American went down there, you'd spend 10 years in a Mexican jail. Jeez. 10 years plus pay the fine.
Yeah.
I think that's the way it should be here. And again, I heard the people talking, and they're going, well, I'm not illegal. I can get a driver's license now. Why couldn't you get one before? Well, because I wasn't born here. Do you have papers? No. Oh, so you are an illegal. I'm sorry. I don't care if you came over with mommy and daddy. You are an illegal because they were illegal.
Yep.
And just because we're the only country in the world that allows anchor babies to establish a residency for the parents. Other countries says we'll give the child dual residency status if he wants it when he's 18. But he is not a citizen yet. We'll let somebody else pay for his health care that he needs as an infant. We'll let somebody else pay for his education. We'll let somebody else do all those things if he turns out to be a juvenile delinquent. But if he meets our standard, we'll take him back when he's 18.
Yeah. Michael, is there anything else you want to touch on?
Dodd-Frank.
Okay, yeah.
Dodd-Frank law was supposed to straighten out the banking industry, and the only thing I saw good in it was that originally it said you couldn't do derivatives. They turned around, they eliminated that. Derivatives are still with us. We're having a ton of problems with derivatives. So Dodd-Frank is not one. This was an article that just popped up on Dodd-Frank, and it says the tax policies and the regulations that are included in Dodd-Frank are stifling business. Mm-hmm. This was written or was agreed to by Business Roundtable in December, the first day of December. They actually sat down and said, what's the biggest problems? There was 2,700 business leaders that were there that were invited to this thing. They sat down and they did it. And this Business Roundtable on Economic Outlook, they do the Economic Outlook Index, and they said regulation is going to stifle business going forward. Then, the month later is when I get the report from the Census Bureau that says we've lost 70,000 more jobs than 70,000 more businesses than started business this last year. And I'm going, that's a 17.5% gap. You can see it working. Oh, wait a minute. Those guys went down, business went down on the prospect of Dodd-Frank still has not been fully implemented. It's kind of like Obamacare. They're bringing it in stages. I got some, again, on the oil. Here's a guy that his name, is Robert Johnson. He wrote on Morningstar.com that the 321,000 job gain that we had in November, and of course they're still working on December numbers, but they have a hefty gain there. And he said a quote, for 2014, the monthly job growth has ranged from 84,000 to 321,000 jobs added every single month.
Wow.
Every month it was between 84,000 and 321,000. First of all, we have, quote-unquote, a stable economy. We have no wage inflation. It's stable wage, actually slight decline since 2007. If they've added this many jobs, which would put them right at 3 million jobs for the year, he says, we would have an increase. We would start showing an increase, and we're not doing that. And I love the way he concluded his little report. He said, taken in total, a peek underneath the hood of these job numbers suggests a market that still has a ways to go to get back to 2007 levels. And now we have our president telling us how well the economy's doing. There's no factual basis unless you take it from a obscure, very narrow scope. And this is how President Obama can do it, because he claims that he has increased the national debt less than Dwight Eisenhower. And he can say that if you take the total annual GDP, economic picture, and apply it to the increase in debt. Dwight Eisenhower had a larger increase because he put in the interstate program. $900 and some odd billion that first year. Well, we had an economy that literally was struggling along to get to $8 billion. He put in more than 11% increase. So yeah, if you look at it in that perspective, he did. But if you look at it in straight out numbers, nobody can touch Obama. Not in any given year of his, unless there's a war going on.
You know, when you mentioned Obama, one of your latest rants you had a time or two before was on, it might have been even last week, but basically talked about how on Thursday night Obama was declared dictator through the Democrats or something like that. Or how did you word that?
Oh, when he came out and took dictatorship when he said, "I'm not going to work with Congress. They're going to have to do it my way."
That's right. Yeah.
He said it.
Yep.
Not the Democrats.
That's
he
right.
said, "I'm not going to work with Congress. I'm not going to change my agenda just because the Republicans won. It's going to be my way or the highway.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to back down. If they pass something that I don't like, I'm going to veto it.
Yep.
If they don't vote for something, then I'm going to use my pen to enact it."
Mm-hmm.
If that's not a dictator, then what is it? You have one-man rule.
Yeah. Michael, anything else you want to share, or any final thoughts, or anything that you want to bring up?
It's going to be an interesting year. I think we're going to have a real interesting year, but I think the economic times are just going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. I think people are going to wake up one day and realize that their wealth has been taken from them by government that was there to serve them.
Do you think that we could see some major things happen within 3 or 6 months, or?
I think we're going to start feeling I think the average American is going to start really feeling it in 6 months, particularly if the oil price continues to decline, because so many of the services that they take for granted now depend upon oil revenue to maintain.